press briefing by the soon-to-be majority caucus in Parliament. And I'm happy going forward. That you've made a determination when you have listened to our colleagues on the other side to also listen to us. I think that is fair. Hitherto, when we have had engagements with you, you would slip to the other side to have a response from them. But then when they hold media engagements, you don't come to us. And I thought it wasn't fair to us. I think that all of us will learn useful lessons going forward as to what to do. To begin with, we recognize that as political parties, ensuing from the conduct of the general elections, we have in Parliament 137 seats to the NPP and 137 seats to the NDC. So as far as the two parties are concerned, we are split down the middle, 137, 137. But Ghana's parliament is not an even number parliament. Ours is an odd number parliament. And the rules of our parliament recognizes only two sides, the majority caucus and the minority caucus. So which side should constitute the majority and which side should constitute the minority? As I have explained on various airwaves and television stations the past 2 weeks or so after the elections, I explained that given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the person who bears the trump card is the independent member of parliament. Wherever he decides to pitch his camp will determine which side constitutes the majority. I'm aware that my own party has been making efforts to reach out to him. Why? Because we know the reality. The reality is that he decides to pitch camp with us. It will give us +1 advantage in the House. And will become the majority side. And the leader of that side will become the majority leader of the House. That comes without any equivocation. I'm aware that the NDC has also been trying to reach out to him. And it's born out of the confession of the chief whip at Joy, was it yesterday, that he was disappointed in the fact that he turned him down. Why was he disappointed? And what was the purpose in trying to reach out to him? Just to accept the reality of the times, that if he pitched camp with the NDC, they certainly will constitute the majority because they will have their 137 +1. If he opts to pitch camp with the NPP, it is also 137 +1. That will give us the majority sides, the majority seats in Parliament. And the leader of the group that occupies the majority seats would be the majority leader. Where do they sit? By practice and convention. That group will sit on the right of the speaker. I started off by saying that I believe I'm going to be the majority leader in the shortest possible time or soonest, because you know what has happened. And when we met the speaker 3 days ago, he determined for us that is congruent to what I have been saying all this while, that where the former MP decides to pitch camp will determine where the pendulum will swing. And so he said, and fortunately, the second deputy speaker, who is the former MP, was with us. So he said a lot will depend on you. I will encourage you to come with a declaration, and then I would announce the declaration in plenary And that would put a stop to this, and then we'll know going forward which side will constitute the majority caucus. As I've said, the side that produces the majority caucus is the side that then will have the majority leader. So that really is it. Does it mean that the person, the independent member of parliament would have crossed carpet? Certainly no. Because if he elects to cross carpet, the seat would have to be declared vacant. And then there will have to be a by-election. But that is not certainly the case. And we've had independent members and indeed minority parties pitch camp for purposes of transacting business in the House with one side or the other. In 1997, when we first came, our number, NPP, was exactly 61. And the CPP at the time had 4 seats. The PNC had 2. So together they had 6 seats. They decided to join ranks with the NPP for purposes of transacting business, which took our number to 67. So the minority caucus at the time was 67. The implication is that in forming committees, those people who joined us would be on the wings or in the belly of the NPP. And then they will have, the NPP will have to ensure that populating the various committees, they take on board the other minority party members. In constituting delegations, whether in Ghana or outside Ghana, they will be part of the NPP minority caucus. That indeed is what happened in 1997, between 1997 and 2001 January. At the time, we had one member of parliament who we had entered parliament with on the ticket of NPP. I've just forgotten the name. He was from the north. He was Sani Idi Wulensi. He came to parliament with him. Into 2000, he lost the primaries, and President Kufuor, after he had lost, made him DCE for the place. And I think into the ensuing primaries, he wanted to contest. He lost the primaries and decided to fill himself as independent member of parliament. He did. He had been on a ticket of NPP in 1997. And Kufuor had made him DC when he lost the primaries. And yet, when he contested as independent and won and came to parliament, he elected not to do business with NPP and joined the ranks of NDC. So he joined the NDC caucus. It's the reason why I am a bit circumspect talking about the Fomena MP, right? Notwithstanding, he has made a declaration. I'm only hoping that between today and tomorrow, he will not change his mind and make a U-turn. A human being is capable of doing anything. I'm only hoping that he doesn't make a U-turn. If he doesn't, he takes his own declaration and the speaker makes that open affirmation and declaration in plenary, then the decision would have been made. And then it will determine where the pendulum would swing. So, as far as I'm concerned, that will settle the matter. And if it settles the matter, if it determines where the majority will sit, to me, that will be the end of the matter. The minority are saying that they will insist that the declaration by the independent member of parliament for Fomena does to do business with NPP caucus does not make them the majority. By what stretch of imagination? By what stretch of imagination? The majority caucus is not dependent on just one party. And I've explained this for the umpteenth time. See, in the recent elections, assuming the NPP had garnered 120 seats, and NDC had garnered 130 seats, the NDC will control the majority of seats in parliament, right? 120, 130. The two together would make 250, all right? But to the extent that they've not crossed the magical number of 137, they cannot be described as the majority caucus. Now the 25 remaining, perhaps made up of independent members of parliament and members from other minority parties, if they elect to do business with the NDC, right, all of them, to say take their number to 130 plus 25, it will give them 155. And unquestionably, the NDC then will have overwhelming majority, as opposed to 120 by the NPP. And the leader of that group, the recognized leader of that group, will become the majority leader. Assuming for purposes of discussion that the 25 elect not to do business with the 130 and they link up with the 120 to beef up the number to 145. The 145 would constitute the majority caucus, and the leader will be the majority leader. Unless somebody who perhaps is unaware of parliamentary democratic practice. This is what obtains everywhere. Now, in the Westminster system, where the leader, the prime minister, will come from parliament, if it happens that way, the party with the majority of seats, that is, in this case, the NDC, will be given the first option to form government. And then they'll be required, normally they give them maybe about 1 week to produce a government, in which case you have to negotiate with the 25. If you succeed, and you are able to have many of them to cross, let's say 8 out of the 25 to join you, you have 138, right? And then you produce the prime minister, the leader of that caucus, then will produce the prime minister. That's how it is. If you don't succeed with your 130, the party with the second highest number of seats is then given the opportunity to also lobby the others. If they buy into the agenda of that party, then they will form a coalition and they will produce the prime minister. Anybody who is aware of parliamentary practice knows this. I don't see this one becoming a subject of litigation. I don't see it. Of course, these are initial stages. I want to believe that when the chips fall in place tomorrow, I think we will be able to overcome this. As far as I'm concerned, the initial storms, which be a storm in a teacup, in my view. I'm happy that at the end of it all, the minority, the NDC leader now, said to you, they don't mind sitting to the left of the speaker. I think that would be the initial step of consultation, consensus building. But the fact that adding 1 to the 137 would put the NPP caucus in the majority, having the majority of seats in parliament and therefore qualifying to be described as the majority caucus, with their leader as the majority leader, comes without any equivocation. So that should be the issue. And I think they raise other issue that I've been saying, that the speaker won by consensus. Again, I don't see why there should be any dispute about that. Because in any such contest involving 2 people in public space, and the Constitution is clear on that. If you look at Article 50, Article 51 of the Constitution, it provides, and for the avoidance of doubt, let me quickly flip us through. Article 51 says, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, where at the close of nominations on the day before a public election, 2 or more candidates have been nominated, the election shall be held, and the candidate who receives the largest number of votes shall be declared elected. The candidate who receives the largest number of votes shall be declared elected. How can you declare a candidate as having garnered the largest number of votes if you don't do the counting of the votes? Right? In this particular, indeed, this is also re-emphasized by our own orders, Order 9.6, which provides, where 2 persons are proposed and seconded for the office of the speaker, the person who received the greater number of votes shall be declared elected as speaker. Right? Now, you all saw what happened that day. In the process of conducting the elections, the effort got truncated on 3 different occasions. First, by Muntaka when he sees the ballot box and said, we're not going to allow anybody to drop the ballot in it. That was the first. The second, the same person was involved, banging the ballot box and destroying it. So on all those occasions, we had to begin the process again, start anew. The third one, you also, which involved the kicking and running roughshod over the marshal, kicking boots and so on, again confiscating the ballot box. 3 processes, all 3 processes were dastardly acts. Then the fourth one was after we had finished voting and our own colleague Carlos also snatching the ballots. What did it mean? All these sought to truncate the processes of election. In that regard, even when we finished and we needed to make a determination, we couldn't really rely on any numbers. When we have in such public elections are concluded, the Electoral Commission, for instance, would declare a person having elected on account of numbers garnered. So you say that candidate A has secured maybe 100 votes. Candidate B has secured 105 votes. On account of these votes, candidate B, who has 105, has the greater number of votes, and accordingly, I declare him elected. Is that not the standard language? In Parliament, the same thing was supposed to apply, except that in this particular case, after counting one pile, the second count of the pile, the count of the second pile could not be concluded. So on what account were you going to say that the second person had the greater number of votes? You couldn't, because it was inconclusive. However, we needed to move forward as a nation. Don't forget, we have been on this single process, electing the speaker, for 8.5 hours, from 12 midnight to 8:30 a.m. the following day. And we're not making progress. In the meantime, the program for the swearing in of the president had been penciled to commence at 11, and all were to get seated at 10 o'clock. We're not oblivious of that fact. We're not oblivious of the fact that heads of state and heads of government have been invited, who were waiting in their hotels, soon to leave their hotels to come to the arena for the coronation of the president. So we had, not me alone, between me and the minority leader, and indeed between me, the NPP leadership and the NDC leadership at the time, to really try to fashion something out. The first proposal that we put on the cards was that there was to be a rerun. And my colleagues, after consultation among themselves, said they wouldn't accept that. Then we submitted a fallback plan, which was that we were to deem Bagbin as having been elected and allow for, and I'm quoting myself, allow for cooler heads to prevail. So Bagbin was to be in the chair for 2 weeks. We allow for cooler heads to prevail, and thereafter, we have a real run for the office of the speaker. When I put this down, my colleagues then reclined to still have consultation. After about 10 minutes, they came back to say that idea they couldn't accept. Whereupon I threw it to my colleague Harun Idrisu, the leader of the NDC caucus, that I've submitted 2 proposals. You have rejected. So what are you suggesting? And then from one among their fold, we had this, that no, we should consider Bagbin as having been elected on account of the fact that 138 ballots were outstanding to be counted, and that to all intents and purposes, all 138 votes were for Bagbin. And I said, by what stretch of imagination? Because in counting out this one, 137, we had to pull out 1 as being a spoiled ballot. So by what stretch of imagination can you conclude that all 138 would be valid votes cast for Bagbin. You are only imagining. So by arithmetic conclusions, I say, what arithmetic conclusions? When we have not counted. But we're still in the process of consultations and consensus building. It explains why at the end of the day, when the clerk came to make the announcement, he did not refer to any numbers. That candidate A had these numbers, candidate B had these numbers. On account of the fact that candidate B had much more numbers than candidate A, candidate B is declared the winner. He couldn't have said so because the process was truncated, right? So when he came to us, what's the language? He said, this morning, Parliament met to conduct elections, to elect a speaker. He says, in the processes leading to the declaration of the results, an unfortunate event happened, arising out of which leadership had to engage in consultations. I'm quoting the very language of that communication from the clerk, who then was doubling up as the chairman for the occasion, in the absence of the speaker. So he said, accordingly, that is ensuing from that consultation, I am holding the Honorable Bagbin to take the chair as the Speaker of this House. So it was not predicated on any numbers, but that was part of the consensus that we had attained. Don't forget, in the election of the deputy speakers, usually the party that wins the speakership would also submit another person for the deputy speakership. If we had won, maybe we would have put up Osei-Usu as if I were going to put up Osei-Usu as the first deputy speaker, and they would maybe take the second deputy speaker. It turned out that by the consensus that we had to engage in, the speaker was going to come from the NDC stock. He was a former member, but he's from the NDC stock. So then we insisted that in that case, the first and second deputy speakers should come from within the caucus of the NPP. One from mainstream NPP, and the other one from the independent member. Ultimately, after some initial haggling on that, we agreed. And it explains the reason why when we came to the floor, as part of the consensus, I had to propose Osei-Usu for my colleague Haruna Dusu to second it. And as you saw, the Honorable Afenyo Markin, who had the CV and the consent letter from the Fomena MP, had to surrender the two documents to Mutaka, who then proposed the Honorable Member for Fomena as the second deputy speaker for the Honorable Deputy, the deputy leader for the NPP caucus to second the motion. So it was all part of the consensus that we brokered. No malice intended, but I just want to relate to the issues that we dealt with. So that indeed is what transpired. When we met the speaker, as I said, he was bold in his own understanding of the law that whatever declaration is made by the former MP will settle the scores. So I think that we've moved beyond that. The determination will be made tomorrow. Yesterday we met, and ensuing from that, I read from today's papers that the meeting on whatever declaration that we made by the former MP, which would influence which side constitutes the majority, was inconclusive. But that was not even part of yesterday's discussion. That had been settled 3 days ago. Yesterday's meeting, really, there was a rehash of what happened earlier. And my colleagues were indicating that as part of the consensus building, in the formation of the leadership of the various committees, we should now be consensual and for the NPP to pick one, and they will pick one, right? What is the provision? in the orders and what is the practice of the House. The majority caucus occupies the leadership of all the committees except Public Accounts and Subsidiary Legislation Committee. But you recollect, I don't know how many of you were with us, in the lead up to the proroguing of Parliament, some new standing orders were to be introduced. And in that standing orders, we had made a conscious effort to have the minority party have leadership of some of the committees. Why? Because you see, in the established democracies, you always have the minority parties chairing some of the committees, right? Because you see, the axiom is that a parliament is as strong as its committees make it. If the committees are not strong, parliament is weakened. It's the reason why, even long before the conduct of these elections, not knowing how the elections were going to pan out, we had given this indication, and we're all together in this until after the conduct of the elections, when my colleagues began insisting that no, they will not allow the passage or the adoption of the new standing orders. But to be fair, you know what happened? Yesterday when we met, they were saying that we should go into the new standing orders, which has not been adopted, and apply what we have provided for in the new standing orders. My own position was that, look, we had stated this, you disagreed. So how can you pick and choose? I think what we need to do now, and I still stand by the principle, if you want to strengthen Parliament, that is the way to go. Unfortunately, as late as I think last Saturday, one of our own went on Joy FM and was bastardizing Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu. Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu wants to dominate Parliament. That's why he wanted to introduce the new standing orders. Today, the chicken are coming home to roost. And they are now realizing that no, we should have approved of the standing orders after all. I still remain truthful to that cause. Except, you see, because we are in a new regime, we have to have the new members of Parliament have a buy-in into this. So maybe you have to spend little time to explain to them. And when we met yesterday, we decided to form a small technical committee and then listen to people. And that is why, as you see, I think some of our colleagues are holding the new standing orders. And we are saying that they should study it. If they have any input, let us know. And they should avail same to that small technical committee that we want to form tomorrow. That committee will be unveiled. And then they will factor it into the new standing orders, if possible. And then they will bring it back to us. And then those of them that they think they can incorporate, they will do so. I think within a very short time, we can adopt it. And once we adopt it, then we'll go by the tenets of the new standing orders. For now, as far as I'm concerned, we are not even there. Why? Because what is important to us now, just 3 committees. The Committee on Selection, right, to constitute the committees. Then the Business Committee, and then the Appointment Committee. Those of them, however, the Committee on Selection, by the standing orders that you're operating with, is chaired by the Speaker. That comes without any dispute. The new orders is still chaired by the Speaker. The Appointment Committee is chaired by the First Deputy Speaker. In the new orders, we still retain him. So, again, there's no dispute about that. The Business Committee, in the old order, is chaired by the Majority Leader. In the new orders, we have further improved that. We have said that not necessarily even the Majority Leader, but the Leader of Government Business. Why? Because, you see, about 90% of the work that we do in Parliament is government business. So we could have a situation where the Majority Leader may not be from the ruling party. And if you say that the Majority Leader must chair the Business Committee when he doesn't control government business, that would be a recipe for disaster. It would mean that government business cannot be transacted. If the chairman determines that I will not allow this, that could be a problem for the country, which is why we have further improved it to say that the leader of government business rather should be the chairman of the Business Committee. We have been fortunate since 1992 to have majority leaders doubling up as leaders of government business. But it cannot be in perpetuity. It cannot be eternal, which is why we need to further smith the orders to suit emerging circumstances. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think these are early days, and we need not to be stoking the embers, but to be speaking to the truth. And the truth and nothing but the truth is what I've spoken to. And I believe that where we are as a parliament, giving our numbers, where we are as a government is required to be much more consultative and much more transparent, and also in parliament. The leadership would have to reach out to others in a much more transparent and accountable manner to deepen our democratic governance. That's how it's supposed to be. And I don't think this really is going to be problematic, except maybe a caucus decides that we are going to obstruct government business. If that's not the purpose, I believe where we are, we can bring the nation together all the more and let us know that we are one nation, one people with a common destiny. And I say so because in 2013, when we sent our case to court, the election petition, at the time the NPP caucus had 122 seats in parliament, as against 149 by the NDC, plus the associates increasing their caucus to 153. Even then, we thought if Akufo-Addo had won the election petition, we could have governed and achieved some result for the country in our development efforts. Much more 137 plus 1. I believe what is required of us is to bond together and band together. Be very cooperative and very collaborative in the development effort of this country. I know that in matters of policy, one side may disagree. But what is democracy? When you feel strongly, especially about a matter of policy and principle, you may agree to disagree. And that difference will not have to stall government business. Thank you very much.